Hey guys, as you have probably noticed, Mr. H is not here today. The reason is I ended up having a bit of an accident over the weekend and ended up having to go to the hospital. I'm okay, but I will have to go back tomorrow, and so that's why I'm making this, or well, today, I guess, and also probably tomorrow. And that's why I'm making you this video. And so, what I would really like for you to do, if possible, it would help me out a huge amount. I know it was kind of difficult to do, but I'm asking if we could possibly do the mobile classroom or the virtual classroom. That's what we called it. Again, we'll give you about half the class period to work with the on your own again, and then the second half of the class period you'll be able to talk with other people, but we'll go through all of that. Don't forget, you'll have this class period to work on it, and you'll probably also have the next class period as well, and it'll be due at the end of next class period. So if you look over here where it says Home Learning My Organism Project, you probably want to get through at least part 3 by the end of the class period, maybe even a little bit farther. But we'll talk about that more once we get started. Looking at the do now, again, just writing in the answers to the different questions. Mr. H will take a look at them as soon as I can. And if you have questions, just send me an email. This is going to be like the real deal. So you do need a piece of paper. If you want, you can use that. You could use Google Draw, anything else. But for right now, let's start off by answering those do now questions and just pause the video. I'll take a look at all of those answers so we won't go through the actual answers themselves. So pause the video and do those first. Okay, so now that you're back, we're going to continue on. As far as today goes, you don't have any notes or vocabs. Starting off as always, 3 something cools. So it's kind of difficult to see, but maybe you can see it a little bit better on your laptops. There are a couple of different countries that are working to try to solve the problem of light pollution. When nighttime comes, having a bunch of different bright lights, especially from street lights, ends up messing with a lot of organisms' ability to determine whether or not it's daytime or nighttime. A lot of insects, but also a couple of other different species as well. So the way that they're thinking about combating this is a city in France that they're actually trying it right now, actually. They've used glow-in-the-dark paint that gets charged up by the sunlight during the day, and at night it radiates off. That way they don't have to turn on street lights outside. People can walk down the street and see just fine. There's enough glow-in-the-dark paint to be able to light up all the pathways and provide enough light for people to be able to see without issues. So it's pretty awesome. Second, something cool. This is a device, kind of interesting. Well, let's preface it. The plastics that we use in everyday life, most of them are made out of petroleum products. So like the plastic bags that you get from the grocery store or the water bottles that you drink out of are actually made out of petroleum. What's really interesting about them is you can recycle them every once in a while if they haven't been recycled too many times. But this device takes it a step further. And it's something called a liquefier. And essentially it takes any plastic, you put it in this little cabinet on the right, and it will turn it back into liquid oil that you can then use to make new products or even run your car if you wanted to. In fact, if you took one plastic bag from, let's say, Lulu's or Megamart, Carrefour, or wherever, if you put it in this machine, it would create enough oil for you to go about 10 kilometers in your car, which is really kind of crazy. They do have them all over the place, but it's not really mainstream yet. Hopefully it becomes more commonplace. Imagine being able to run your car off of plastic bags or anything else. It helps to solve our issues with plastic pollution and when you can't recycle. Third, something cool. This is a car created by an Italian company, and it is made entirely out of wood. And when I mean entirely, I mean entirely. Everything that you see here, except for the glass, everything that you see is actually made out of wood. Even the engine has been crafted out of this type of wood that's insanely strong, something called ironwood, to make the engine itself. It runs, it has a fuel tank back in the back, and you fill it with petrol, and it runs like a normal car. Even the tires themselves are actually carved wood. So it's not exactly a comfortable ride, but it's pretty insane that they're able to make that thing. And the only bits that aren't the electrics for the lights, I guess, are also. But everything else that you see, literally everything else that you see, is all going to be made out of wood, which is pretty sweet, I think. Okay, anyway, today you're working on your organism project. And once again, this is where we're at. You hopefully should have gotten all the way through at least the food web, creating it. What I would ask is, if you haven't already done that, maybe in your food web, choose a color for the producers, choose a color for consumers, or choose a color for the decomposers, or simply label them. So when you come up with a name, let's say, I don't know, Arfarv is a producer, just in your food web, either right next to the name Arfarv producer, or put it in a particular color so it's easy to see. Down below, again, don't forget, we're going off of a couple of different questions that we have had before. By all means, look back to your previous investigations, go back to those summatives, search for them in Google Drive, use those to help you out to answer those questions themselves, especially if you didn't do as well the first time around with this, with that assessment. This is going to be the time when you're able to increase your overall score. So there's that. This one as well, it's going to be similar, not quite the same. I think the one that we did was talking about if there was like snakes that increased, how would that affect the rabbits and the grass and the hawk population, if you remember that one. I can't quite remember what that one's called. I think it's patterns across ecosystems. So if you just Google that one in your Google Drive, or search for it in your Google Drive, sorry, you should be able to come up with it, and it's going to be very similar in that regards. And then finally, the one that looks like the sea otters, pay attention to the numbers and see if you can come up with the issue that's most responsible. Only difference is, when we talk about using numbers only, numbers from the reading only, that doesn't mean that you couldn't use other information. So we've given you a little bit of information up at the top, which might be helpful in coming up with your argument. So evidence can be both numbers, and it can also be some sort of data that you have learned about. The explanation, though, for how it's causing it to decrease, that's where your reasoning is for us. So again, you're highlighting which one you think is the most involved, or the most reason for why they're declining. And then you're going to be writing out that CER, same as you did with the sea otters. So half of the class period, working silently on your own. The second half of the class period, then you'll have the opportunity to move around and to check your answers with other people and give suggestions and whatnot. So hopefully Mr. H will be back on Monday, but if I'm not there on Monday, then hopefully I'll be there on Tuesday. So we'll have to see, but anyway, I appreciate you guys working really, really hard on it, and I will ask the sub just to write me an email about how the class is going. But all in all, I thank you for working really hard, and I will see you soon.